estimated that at least $27.4 billion in payments to individuals and employers should be investigated further. Where it's confirmed that benefits were paid in error, notifications should be sent and amounts recovered. Under the current system, that's what the government's required to do. If they want to choose a different approach, for example, by forgiving some amounts owing, then they need to be clear and transparent with Canadians. And with that, Monsieur le Président, nous serions heureux de répondre.
We're now ready to take any questions that committee members have. Thank you.
Ms. Hogan. And just so, Ms. Hogan, I just want to inform you, you're probably aware of this, but I would not want to, for you not to be aware that this is a public meeting. So I just want to double confirm you are aware of that, and to all members. And is it a point of order or
informal questions?
Oh, okay,
Chair?
except for the first round. The first round, we're going to go back first.
Right,
So I'll come to you right after, but Mr. McCauley has the floor for 6. It's just the first round, kind of typical, and then I'm going to try to balance it based on the members that are here, proper representation. But if any members want to kind of defer or parties, they can do that as well, depending on the questions. But we will continue this until the questions are exhausted. So, Mr. McCauley, you're up first for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A.G. Hogan, it's nice to see you back again. Mr. Hayes, we just came from question period, and we had a rather shocking attack on the integrity and the independence of the Auditor General's office by the Minister of National Revenue. I want to quote from her. She says, in regards to the AG's calculation to ineligible recipients of wage subsidies, that the AG's figures were exaggerated. It's not her fault, because we all know she was pressured by the opposition. She doubled down later and said it was also because of lack of time. I'm wondering if you could confirm the integrity of your numbers, if they were actually done under pressure from the opposition parties, and how does your office feel about such a partisan attack on the integrity and independence of your office?
So obviously I stand by the findings in my audit report. Our audit work is very rigorous. We are confident in the findings and the numbers that we have put forward. And in fact, that's why we put at least $27.4 billion is we took an approach that was favorable to individuals and to businesses when we did our audit work. We based our work on really the limited information that was available at the Canada Revenue Agency. Because very little was collected on application, we could only look at what information was available, and we believe that we looked at the best information available and came to the best conclusions. I know that we also highlighted in our report some of the post-payment work that the Canada Revenue Agency is doing, more specifically on work around post-payment work on businesses. And I would point you to sort of that annex at the back where there was a phase 1 round of preliminary audits where the error rate was approximately 42%. And then phase 2 where the Canada Revenue Agency has informed us that they improved their sampling strategy, and the error rate in phase 2 is about 60% of the businesses that might have received amounts that were ineligible. While the total dollar values might be small, that indicates to me that a much more rigorous approach to post-payment verification work is needed.
Thank you. Have you ever changed results or your report based on pressure by an opposition party as claimed in question period today?
So the requirement to do the audit on the specific COVID benefits was included in an act. The act's a long name, so I had to write it down. It's the Act to Provide Further Support in Response to COVID-19. That act outlined the programs that we should look at and some of the scope of our audit, and gave us a deadline to provide it to the clerk by December 17th of this year. We staffed accordingly, had sufficient time, great cooperation from the department, and we stand by our findings.
Thank you. The $27 billion, that is, as you said, the best case scenario for taxpayers, basically. That's the bare minimum. Is that correct? It could be substantially higher?
We say at least because there is missing information in order to verify. There are likely that some of the payments to individuals or businesses that we identified as potentially ineligible are ineligible, but there are others that we haven't identified, and we included some of that in parts A through F of our report in part 2, and that's why we believe the government just needs to do more work to identify ineligible payments and then make a decision about recovery.
In 10.35 of your report, you comment that it's difficult to assess the program impact of the wage subsidy because of limited info required by employers on the application. This limited info requested by the taxpayers or the government from businesses for the wage subsidy, is this going to factor into higher losses for taxpayers or a higher amount of ineligible payments that we required so little information?
So in that paragraph, we were talking about whether or not the emergency wage subsidy had met its intended objective. And some of those objectives were to maintain that employer-employee relationship, to rehire employees, and to allow businesses to bounce back when the economy reopened. It was hard to assess whether or not that employer-employee relationship was maintained because there was no information gathered, such as the social insurance numbers of employees, in order to be able to know if that relationship was maintained. What that could mean is that there were individuals who were receiving individual support payments, but then the employer was also claiming a wage subsidy, which may not have been, which may mean that it was ineligible on one side or the other. But we've identified all of those, we believe, in our testing, and have made that information available to the Canada Revenue Agency.
Are you concerned that, I think the final bill for the wage subsidy was almost $100 billion. Like, how concerned are you that so much money went out the door in support with so little information backing? As you mentioned, we were not tracking social insurance numbers. So yes, someone could be collecting CERB and still working part-time at the same time their wage is being subsidized.
As I mentioned at the first audits that we did in 2021 on the wage subsidy program and on the emergency response program, the approach to limit prepayment controls was one that is seen as an international best practice in the time of an emergency. But that comes hand in hand with needing to do rigorous post-payment verification to confirm eligibility and take the steps necessary afterwards. So I'm concerned that there isn't a more rigorous and more comprehensive approach planned on that post-payment work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I had promised the floor to one member, but I had a note from another one, so